So my friends Joe and Pat have a horse farm where they breed Friesians, which are majestic, all black, medieval war horses. There have been 3 horses since I've known them that were not black that I've seen at their farm. The first is Haley. She was a paint that was a rescue. And there's Quest, who is a Morgan. That is Pat's personal horse. And then there's this guy. And of all of the horses, and all of the horses that she's had, Joe sends me this one to do a charcoal sketch of. Now, when I knew him, he was this little guy, and he was a spoiled brat little baby horse. So this one, his government name is Freddie Mercury, but when I knew him, I called him Macbeth because he is half Frisian and half Appaloosa, and Joe wanted to see what his coloration would turn out to be, and she was not pleased with his spots. So since she was always saying "out damned spots," I called it Macbeth. So I did find sepia toned pressed charcoal. I'm not sure that I like it. The texture of it is a little bit off for me. It's a little hard, and so I have to press really hard to get any color to come out of the sepia. And even though this is charcoal paper, I don't know. I'm feeling the texture of the paper and seeing the texture of the paper in the drawing, and I'm not too happy about that. And the blending is a little more difficult as well. So don't get used to seeing the sepia charcoal. In future, when I use brown, it'll probably just be colored pencil. I have, of course, always loved horses in general. I haven't ridden a horse though. When I was 10 years old, all I wanted for my birthday was riding lessons. And so I went to the first riding lesson, and number one, we had to leave so that I could go get proper boots and a helmet and all the accoutrements. So we went and we spent more money on all the accessories. And then when I got there, they had me lead this horse out to the mounting block, and I just couldn't get on the horse. It was way too tall for me. I like physically couldn't get on the horse, but also I am terrified of heights. And so when I saw the height that I would be on this horse, I was like, "Nuh-uh, I can't do this. Sorry." I also really kind of have a problem with going from different speeds, I guess you would say. Like, I never learned to ride a bicycle, and part of it was because I couldn't keep up with going faster, like my reactions or whatever. It took me a long time to get my driver's license, and there were some mistakes along the way. I didn't get my license until I was 18, so there's that too. Well, like I said before, Frisians are a medieval war horse from the Netherlands, and they are currently used often in driving and dressage. But as a medieval war horse, Joe and Pat have taken their Frisians around the country in the past to different Renaissance festivals and things. So they're very well traveled, and when they've gotten a chance, they've also checked out a lot of different zoos. They had pet fruit bats back when it was illegal to do so. And my friend Ariana calls Joe and Pat my most underrated friends because every time she comes up with some off the wall thing, I'm like, "Oh yeah, Joe and Pat were telling me about that," or they've been there and seen that, and it's just kind of funny. Joe and Pat are some really good friends of mine, and they remind me a lot of Jay and Silent Bob because Joe is very outgoing and talkative, and Pat says more with her facial expressions than she ever gets a chance to say out loud. I say when I knew Freddie or Macbeth or whatever you want to call him, because when I knew the horses really well was when I unexpectedly found myself unemployed, and I would go out and feed their horses 3 days a week for just as long as they covered my gas money, so that I could get some experience with hoof stock, because I hadn't really worked with horses, though I've always loved them. So that was in 2016, throughout the spring, summer, and fall. And they have two barns there, the lower barn and the upper barn. And at that time, Freddie was in the lower barn. Quintus, who is my favorite, was also at the lower barn. And then there was Haley, Quest, Vale, Lucia, Winfield, and Duo. And Duo is the one, even though I said all Frisians are black, Duo I used to call the dumb blonde, because she was very statuesque and beautiful, beautiful horse. But really just as dumb as a box of rocks. I'd be scratching her neck and she'd be really getting into it, but when she really got into it, she would start lifting her neck higher up and I couldn't reach. And it's like, well, you're working against yourself, sweetheart. And then up at the upper barn were Lionheart and Bear, and they were the two older stallions who were each in their 30s when they passed, which is a very long time for the Frisian breed of horse to live. Also at the upper barn were Invictus, Nemesis, Aeon, Alchemy, and I think Lucia was originally up at the upper barn, but then she got moved to the lower barn. Joe and Pat are artists too. Pat does machine embroidery, and Joe does, well, right now she's painting a bunch of minifigures for D&D games, but she also does some polymer clay work. At the end of this segment here, you'll see that I took a break. I had to take a break for a while because the materials in this particular drawing were just frustrating to me. And if it's not fun, it's not worth doing it. I'm not in the right state of mind. So I took about a week off. Painted another owl blank, and then I was back in the mood. I used some painter's tape here to help keep from smudging the charcoal all over the paper, or at least to attempt to keep it from smudging all over. We'll see how it works out. Because why not use watercolor techniques when you're using charcoal? Like I said, art is for play. It's not, there's no rules. I think my favorite part in this drawing is his nostrils, actually. I really like how that turned out, the nostril and lip and whole muzzle area. I think it really helps to convey Freddie's whole attitude. As I said before, I met him in 2016. I think he was either 2 or 3 years old at that time. And so he's still a youngin' and still very spoiled. The mares would put up with a lot from him, and so would the other girls that did feeding. And so he didn't have the best manners when he was a baby because he was so spoiled. For me, the easiest way, if you're an animal under my care, the easiest way to make sure you're fed last is to act like you need to be fed first. I will definitely adequately compensate an animal for the services they provide, but I will not put up with bad manners. I'm glad for Joe that she was right and his spots did seem to disappear as he aged. Or at least they're less noticeable, because I think I still see a couple of little shadow spots, but maybe that's just because I expect to see spots there. Despite all my frustrations with this drawing and with the materials that I chose to use, I'm still pretty happy with how Freddie turned out. Sorry that you had to listen to me whine in this video. Joe and Pat's farm is a great place to go herping. They regularly find salamanders, often underneath the water troughs of the horses. I have horrible salamander luck, so I never found one. But they find salamanders, snakes, and turtles, and they're always sending me pictures of what they find. And while sometimes it is an eastern garter snake, it's often enough not an eastern garter snake, so that's pretty exciting. And there's a pond there with a pretty large snapping turtle that makes their way out of the pond every once in a while. And I've seen sandhill cranes stop by there, and they'll be in the pasture with the horses sometimes. Overall, it's a nice, quiet place to be, and you can still see some nature. Maybe I should do the eastern garter snake next. I've got a reference photo that I think will really pop on that black paper, and I'm really excited to see how that turns out. What do you think I should do next? I'm kind of leaning towards a hoary bat. I think that would be a good one. It's been a while since I did a bat. I wear the plastic food service glove to help limit the smudging of the charcoal as well, since I am left-handed, and that means that I often end up with smudges on my hand. And I just kind of added some grass lines in the background to help hide some of the smudges. And here's the finished Freddie. Thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, all that nonsense.